Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Sunbury Motors, North 4th Street in Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf.
Somebody who has something, Chris Mack. Sir, welcome. Always a pleasure. Great to have you back.
Good to be back, Steve. Now you put pressure on me to actually have something.
I know. Well, I will lead you in that direction.
There we go. That's why you're the master.
Okay.
There you go.
So let's start with this lead. 18 years. Ben Roethlisberger was a primary reason why the Steelers stayed relevant. As you look back on his career, right, what were some of the characteristics of that career that Pittsburgh fans should appreciate?
First and foremost, it starts with a guy coming in as a rookie off the bench, going from third-string quarterback to starter in a matter of about 2 or 3 weeks, being thrown in there and then rattling off the 13 wins in a row or whatever it was, and going to the AFC Championship game. And then sort of, I guess, adjusting on the fly as he got older to becoming less of that scrambling, extending the play quarterback to the guy that was just a distributor, distributing the ball to Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell and then eventually the guy who, stood back there in the pocket and as ugly as it may have been last year, still got them off to an 11-0 start because he was getting rid of the ball in 2.2 seconds every snap. And I think also off the field, a guy who, look, there will always be the stories that everyone in the Pittsburgh region has about some sort of negative run-in with young Ben Roethlisberger. There's a litany of them. Yep. And you don't even necessarily have to be from Pittsburgh. You can be from Georgia or Reno or somewhere else. And I think what I take away is that even though you still don't hear, you don't hear those as much, I would take away that he did mature somewhat over the years, off the field as well. And I think that lent itself to a few leadership qualities here and there. Look, the guy was never fully beloved by his teammates, but they loved the fact that they were winners when he was back there, I give him some credit for maturing over the years. I give him a ton of credit for being the first the first rookie, I believe it was, to ever play in a conference championship and the first year starter to ever go to a Super Bowl. It's a pretty remarkable career, and to do it all with one team. That's what ultimately he goes down as, is a guy who played with one team at quarterback longer than anybody else. Right.
No question. He will have all that and more, but he kept them relevant. Now, for the first time in off-season in 18 years, where you're not going to look back there and 7's not going to be there, do the Steelers now fall into the trap that I'd say 29 out of the 32 teams in the NFL have fallen into? Patriots, Packers, Steelers aside. The other ones have had, good run, all right, fall below, get a high draft pick, better schedule, bump back up again. Are the Steelers in danger of that potential?
I certainly think there's a chance, I think if they go into next year with just Rudolph and Haskins battling for that starting quarterback spot, then I think they would be putting themselves behind the 8 ball. I think, there's a chance that either one of those guys could come in and perform at least as well as Roethlisberger did this year. I mean, nobody's going to walk away from the 2021 season pretending Ben Roethlisberger was still the elite quarterback he once was. He ended up being bottom 3rd in the league in most statistical categories, if not bottom 5 in a lot of them. So with their defense, and they'll get some guys back next year, presumably, with their defense and the weapons that they do have at receiver, and Najee Harris and Pat Freiermuth, of course. The funny thing is, even with Rudolph or Haskins, they could still scratch out 9 wins and somehow sneak into a wild card. So I don't think they're in danger of spending, a few years in a row in that 6 and 11 spot. I do think maybe a year. That's certainly a distinct possibility. Again, if one of those two guys ends up being their primary option at quarterback, or both of those guys kind of battle back and forth for the job, and there's no veteran stopgap to lend some consistency. I could see it happening for a year or two, but that really is at maximum, I think, the deepest depths they go to, because ultimately they've still got TJ Watt, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Cam Hayward, and they've still got Najee Harris and Pat Fryer.
Is the fan base, though, ready for a reset?
I think the fan base is slowly coming around to the fact, and I've seen a lot more people espousing this thought in the last few days, that this was the beginning of the rebuild, right? When you look at 5 new starters on the offensive line, you're essentially telling yourself you're rebuilding, And so I think when you look at the 5 new starters on the offensive line, 2 rookies starting at very important positions, tailback and tight end, and knowing that your quarterback was on fumes, it was essentially the start of a rebuild. They just so happened to somehow get into the playoffs. Whether you want to argue it's because of the expanded field, because of the tie, because of whatever it was, they somehow snuck into the playoffs. So if that's the worst Steeler fans have to deal with, is sneaking into the playoffs in a year where they were essentially trying to start sort of soft launch into a rebuild, then they'll be in good shape, I think.
Chris, here are 2 issues, though, they do face that are out of their control at the moment. One is they're going to get a second-place schedule and not a last-place schedule. Mm-hmm. Number 2, they're going to be drafting in the 20s again. So they're not going, without Ben, they're not going to get the benefits that, for example, Philadelphia had a last-place schedule, and boy, did it ever pay off.
Right.
They're going to end up with 3 first-round draft picks out of this, but they're not. They're not going to get a high top 10 draft pick because of what they've been doing. You have to play each season the way it plays out, so there's no problem with that. I'm just saying that those are 2 benefits they will not have.
Yeah, and they're not in the NFC East either.
No, that's
so
just,
the Eagles down the stretch. I mean,
exactly.
they're in an up and coming division. Whether you like what the Browns have at quarterback or not, their defense is still very good. Whether you like what the Ravens have on defense or offensive line or not, they've still got Lamar Jackson. And I don't think there's anything you can really openly dislike about the Bengals, given the way they're playing right now. So good luck in that division too. They had a first place schedule this year. And like I said, they still somehow managed to scratch out 9 wins. Now that was also playing the NFC North, where they went, they went 1-2-1 against that division, actually. Right. I see what you're saying. I do think, again, the organization, and I get this from some of the things that Mike Tomlin said Tuesday during his final press conference of the year, and just from the way fans are reacting to a lot of it. Everyone understands, I think, exactly where they're at, and that quarterback is going to be a project for a while, most likely. Mm-hmm. The offensive line is an ongoing project. I think people are more worried about the things that are popping up that they didn't come into this season expecting to be deficiencies. Inside linebacker, Devin Bush is not what they traded for, up 10 spots. Yeah. Joe Schobert is not the guy they traded a 5th-round pick for during training camp. Right. Their inside backers are, when Robert Spillane is the best of your inside linebackers, and he's a free agent, you're in trouble. When your wide receivers, all of a sudden that room's become very thin. As far as guys that you're totally and supremely 110% confident in, you can't count on Deontay Johnson to catch the ball. We're back there with him.
Yep.
You can't count on Chase Claypool to do much more than sprint down the sidelines and jump really high and try to draw a defensive pass interference. You can't count on Juju Smith-Schuster to be back. And if he is back, what's he giving you other than maybe another target over the middle? All of a sudden, they've gotten very thin at receiver. And this offense, again, has been dialed back to the point where regardless of who the quarterback is, they're going to be asked to do a whole lot basically on the backs of Najee Harris and Pat Freiermuth again.
When T.J. Watt was available, he played at an incredibly high level, but that's when he was available. You watched him every game. What has made him special to what they do, and does he have the versatility to do more?
I think they found the sweet spot, and I don't know how much more they could really ask him to do. He has become, I think, the premier edge rusher in the NFL. You don't tie the sack record without becoming the best or one of the 2 or 3 best in the league at what you do.
Right.
That's why they paid him the way they did, and it's the best decision they've made in the past year or so, deciding to pay T.J. Watt enough to keep him around for the bulk of what's left of his career or productive years of his career. I think I'm more concerned with, again, what they're building around him on the rest of the defensive side of the ball. Mm-hmm. They like Alex Highsmith, the other edge rusher.
Yeah, no, he's good.
He's going to continue to develop. He did a great job of putting on a ton of muscle this past offseason and not losing any speed.
It sounds like you. I mean,
yeah, it's muscle. That's exactly what it is.
And more speed. I'm impressed.
Maybe speed in the tailgate parking lot as far as consuming beverages, but no. That hole in inside linebacker is a big dark one for them. Yeah. The fact that they don't know where they stand with Stephon Tuitt, who didn't play at all this year. Tyson Alualu might come back, but he's going to be 35. Cam Hayward's going to be 33 next year. He's coming off the best year of his career, but still 33. Joe Hayden might be gone, and if he is back, it's probably only for one more year. He's going to be 33 as well. All of a sudden, there are spots popping up everywhere, and they've become a very top-heavy defense. It's Watt, Hayward, Fitzpatrick, and then a bunch of other guys, especially if Hayden is gone. And they can't count on T.J. Watt to do it all. Certainly, it helps to have a guy like T.J. Watt, but if you're that top-heavy on defense, I think it does create a problem. They do have the benefit of more than enough cap space this year that if they want to go out and sign free agents, whether it be on the offensive line or defensive line, corner, inside backer, strong safety, that they can do those things and still have the luxury of drafting as well.
What about the cap room that they have? Now, I know Roethlisberger played under a different contract this year. Watt's contract obviously is huge. So where are they on cap space with this? Now, it should be more because the cap's going to obviously go up.
Yeah, the cap's going way up. So they're somewhere, depending on how you define it, based on the 53-man roster or what they have on the books. The top 40 or top 51 rule, I think, is what you go by in the off season. They've got somewhere around $34 million, $34 to $40 million of cap space right now.
Right.
And now you are, to your point, Roethlisberger, Juju Smith-Schuster, Eric Ebron all have voidable years on the end of their 2021 deals that will end up rolling up into this year's cap. But it's not enough to really hamstring them. Those were small amounts that were put on those voidable years. It was just to sort of spread the bonus hit out. So they're still in a decent position. Yes, it's the first year of T.J. Watt's big cap hit. It's also a big cap hit for Cam Hayward, the first really big cap hit kicking into his contract extension. They'll get Minkah Fitzpatrick on a rookie contract for one more year, but they've got to extend him, so that contract will start to kick in after 2023 and beyond. I think they've got enough space. Like I said, I would love to see them this offseason provide insurance in free agency. Because free agency starts 6 weeks before the draft. You have no idea how the draft is going to shake out.
Right.
Go into free agency, get yourself a quality offensive lineman, whether it be at tackle or at center. Get yourself a veteran complementary running back so that Najee Harris doesn't have to touch the ball 500 times next year. Get yourself maybe a complementary veteran inside linebacker or another defensive line piece or a corner. I'm not saying you have to sign all those things because then you very quickly run out of cap space.
Yeah.
But a couple of those spots, maybe a veteran quarterback, depending on what they're looking for, somebody to come in and put some pressure on Mason Rudolph and Dwayne Haskins to actually buckle down and become that guy that each of them thinks they can become. And then allow yourself the luxury when you go in at 20th overall, because you have no idea what's going to slide to you there, to actually take the best possible player available to you.
All right, and finally about Kevin Colbert, who's been there for so much of all of this. This will be the last draft he does, I believe, for the Steelers. Is there an appreciation in the city for actually what he has done? Because I pointed out the Patriots and the Packers. The Steelers, those are the only three that have stayed relevant for 20 years.
Yeah, I think it helps, too, to be honest. You know how provincial Pittsburghers are. They love the fact that Kevin's a Pittsburgher, a North Catholic guy. They love the fact that he's, to be honest, one of the nicest guys I've ever met in the world of sports. He's just down to earth. And, not a lot of BS from him. He's going to tell you for the most part exactly what he thinks. You remember last year or 2 years ago when he got absolutely skewered by the national media for saying it was Ben and 52 kids in the locker room, right? Yeah, right. He's telling you what he thinks. And so I think what the Steelers have the luxury of, and look, some fans don't like this, but this is always what they've done and always what they will do. And it's become a part of their DNA and how they handle things is they will look to promote from within. It's what they'll do at defensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. It's what they did at offensive coordinator. Yeah. When they brought in Matt Canada as the QB's coach, let Fichtner go, Canada elevated. They brought in Terrell Austin a couple years ago. Mm-hmm. He'll elevate to defensive coordinator when Keith Butler inevitably announces his retirement this offseason. Brandon Hunt is their director of player personnel, another Pittsburgh guy. He's going to be elevated to GM. Maybe not with some of the same exclusive powers that Kevin Colbert has right now, and work more in concert with Omar Khan, the cap guy, and Mike Tomlin, who already has a lot of say in personnel matters, but he'll be elevated. That's the way they do things. They have people who have become a part of their philosophies, who understand their philosophies. Again, some fans don't like that. They want new blood. They want a hotshot coordinator. They want someone to come in with new, fresh ideas. And at times, I'll be honest, the Steelers look like they need some new, fresh ideas, especially when you see the offensive game plans in particular. But I think being able to pass things along from Kevin Colbert to Brandon Hunt will be a part of, you won't have to worry about the draft going one way and then a new GM coming in and wanting to completely blow things up.
New, fresh ideas. I mean, it sounds like I'm in a staff meeting. All right, so it's Chris. Chris, thanks so much. Appreciate you, and it was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much, Steve. We'll hope to talk again soon.
I hope so.